Welcome again to Catabolism. Now it's the pathway of the pathways, alcoholic fermentation. You're hopefully already an expert of glycolysis, and you might have already watched the lactic acid fermentation, and you say, lactic acid fermentation, it's good for yogurt, but if I'm at the bar, I prefer to have a beer. So now the question is, how does it work? What is alcoholic fermentation and how does it look like? And the good news is it's as simple as homofermentative lactic acid fermentation. So here we go. Let's have a look in how it works. Okay, we talked about lactic acid fermentation, but now let's come to a pathway which, at least in the eyes of the students, is the most important fermentation pathway. It's the alcoholic fermentation. So let's go straight ahead into this pathway. Now, you're experts, so you know glycolysis, you know it in your best dreams, you can write it down. And you, of course, know you start with glucose. This is what we have talked about also in the fermentation pathway of fermentative lactic acid fermentation. We come then to fructose, just without oxidation, just some kinases, just some isomerases, and that's it. And then we end up at fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. We split it up, and of course you know what these molecules are. This is dihydroxyacetone phosphate because the core structure is acetone, and this molecule is glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. And this is catalyzed by the alkylase. And of course, you know then the next step in glycolysis is the key step, the oxidation of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate into 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. And this is what made us happy in glycolysis, because that's where we brought in the energy to generate this energy-rich bond, which we can transfer onto ATP. And finally, we end up with pyruvate and have recycled our ATP. You remember, we are here in fermentation, so the whole thing we do is how to get rid of this NADH. Homofermentative lactic acid fermentation, very simple. We put it on this keto group here. Now your bacterium or a yeast strain, and you say, wow, acidic environments don't make me so happy. So the point is, you sit there, look at this pyruvate, and you think, what to do now? Then you say, I learned that there are oxidative decarboxylations when we started to go into the citric acid cycle. But I realized an oxidative decarboxylation is bullshit, because if I do an oxidative decarboxylation, I have another production of reduction equivalents, and I want to get rid of them. So oxidative decarboxylations are not a good idea. What about just a decarboxylation? What about if we just add pyruvate decarboxylase? So we don't oxidize, we just put away the carbon dioxide, and that's it. What will happen? This group here at the end will turn into an aldehyde group. It's a keto group, which is at the end, more or less. And this is what without oxidation. If it would have been an oxidation, you know, we would end up with a carboxyl group here if this carbon dioxide leaves. So, and of course, the molecule which we have then is acetaldehyde. Instead of acetate, the acid, we have acetaldehyde, which is an aldehyde, as the name says. And the enzyme here is the pyruvate decarboxylase. It's non-oxidative. If it would be oxidative, the enzyme would be called pyruvate dehydrogenase, and the product will be acetate, or as you know, it's acetyl-CoA, because you couple the energy to this CoA binding. Now we have acetaldehyde, and now we look at this molecule. As you know, we want to design a pathway where we get rid of our reduction equivalents without producing an acid. That was the problem here with pyruvate. We had this lactate, and this is so sour at the end, and we don't feel happy if it's sour. So we look at this group, and then we say, and then look, there's an aldehyde group. Why don't we use this aldehyde group as an electron acceptor? And of course, if we reduce an aldehyde group, what do you expect to have? An hydroxyl group, and that's it. So we use acetaldehyde as an electron acceptor, put our electrons there, and believe it or not, then we have ethanol. And of course, this enzyme is called alcohol dehydrogenase from the back reaction. Although it's ethanol, this is the alcohol, therefore is alcohol dehydrogenase, or ADH, and this is coming from the back reaction. And of course, what's happening there, because it's a reduction, we take the electrons from the NADH, recycle it, and we're back. So we have one additional step. In contrast to the homofermentative lactic acid fermentation, we need to decarboxylate the pyruvate, and then we again have generated an electron acceptor we can use, and then we have ethanol. And the advantage now is this is not an acid, it's an alcohol. The disadvantage is that this is also toxic. That's the bad news for you as a student. Ethanol is toxic. So if the concentrations are too high, also this makes the organisms unhappy. You need to have a certain resistance against this ethanol. However, the good news is these organisms have evolved. What world would it be if we have just organisms which think of that using pyruvate as electron acceptor is enough? Then we would live in a world where we only have lactate around and no ethanol around. This wouldn't be good. So that's the good news. The bacteria and microorganisms have evolved also in this direction. My net balance here, if I look at that, is the same as for homofermentative lactic acid fermentation. Basically, I produce from an hexose like glucose 2 molecules of ethanol. As I have a decarboxylation here, of course, I also produce 2 molecules of carbon dioxide, and I produce 2 ATPs. Here they are. So the net balance is the same as homofermentative lactic acid fermentation. I have an additional step, and I produce ethanol, which is non-acidic, however, which is ethanol. That's alcoholic fermentation. You see, in a second, we have deduced the alcoholic fermentation, just adding one enzyme, and it's all based on the structure formulas. It's so straightforward. If you have understood what oxidation and reduction in organic groups means, and we talk here only about CO type groups or double bonds in the citric acid cycle, to be honest, from succinate to fumarate, but the remaining part is only oxidation types are hydroxyl groups, keto or aldehyde groups, carboxyl group. This is the oxidation line, and that's it. That's very simple. Of course, if you then start with nitrogen and so on, things are getting a bit more complicated, but here we're in the world of oxidizing around the carbon, and that makes life easy. That's it. So here we are. We have ethanol. Taking it together, so we have the glycolysis here, the pure glycolysis, where of course we require an aldolase ending at the pyruvate, and then we start with a pyruvate decarboxylase, and then we have ADH and we have ethanol, and everything is fine. Our NADH is recycled. And of course, you know how important these processes are, because these are the organisms which can do that. As an example, of course, Saccharomyces species can do that. But there are also bacteria who have this for alcoholic fermentation pathways like Pseudomonas. And of course, you produce very important substances like bread, but even more important substances like Tannenzäpfle or wine, in this case, Silvaner. Now, the bread, you say, there is no alcohol in bread, but it uses this pathway, because the effect here is that you have your yeast producing carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide is the effect you want, and this also uses this alcoholic fermentation pathway. But also bioethanol, which is added to fuel, is of course produced with this pathway, and you have there a real industrial biotech product. Yeah, that's it about alcoholic fermentation. And you will see in the lab course, we want to produce glycerol. And what we do in the lab course is we capture this acetaldehyde. So we use sulfite, and sulfite reacts with acetaldehyde to give hydroxyethane sulfonate. Don't care about that name, it doesn't matter. At the end, you take away this acetaldehyde. So therefore, acetaldehyde is gone as an electron acceptor. You cannot use that anymore as an electron acceptor. Now I say, okay, I don't want to use pyruvate because that's too acidic. And then you just sit there and think, what other molecule can I use? Let's have a look. This phosphoglycerate doesn't make too much sense because I want to generate energy. Look, there is dihydroxy acetone phosphate. If I compare that to pyruvate, I also have in the middle a keto group. What about if I just take away this phosphate and if I use this keto group as an electron acceptor, what will I get? Of course, I will get glycerol. So you use dihydroxyacetone phosphate as an internal electron acceptor and you get glycerol. This is the so-called Neubauer two-type fermentation pathways. And this has been used as a production pathway for glycerol because before the chemical production of glycerol was not possible, and this was used. For the yeast, of course, this is not very cool because you see that the net balance here is from one molecule glucose, you produce one molecule glycerol, hydroxyethane sulfonate, and carbon dioxide, and you don't see an ATP in this balance. So for a yeast, this doesn't make too much sense. So therefore, you need to grow them first before you start adding your sulfide. You won't see much growth in the presence of sulfide for the yeast. Today, of course, nobody produces glycerol like that. Glycerol is a kind of, if you do fatty acid production and so on, it's a side product in many also chemical synthesis steps, and therefore it's no problem to get into touch with glycerol. Now, if you look at homofermentative lactic acid fermentation, alcoholic fermentation, if you just put them side by side, you see that it's basically on the top, it's all the same. It's glycolysis. It's the Embden-Meyerhof-Parnasse pathway. And if you look a bit lower, it's almost the same. So the only difference is that in homofermentative lactic acid fermentation, pyruvate is directly used as an electron acceptor. And in the case of alcoholic fermentation, you just have an additional decarboxylation step to produce acetaldehyde, and then that's it. And then you can produce ethanol by just using the aldehyde group as an electron acceptor. That's it. So you see that they are quite similar and they use the same pathway above. So you also see that you have learned two pathways after having learned glycolysis. The step from glycolysis to homofermentative lactic acid fermentation and alcoholic fermentation is a very, very tiny step. There is not much more to be learned or discussed here. Now, what are some key points about alcoholic fermentation? There are not many organisms doing that, interestingly, but yeast and Pseudomonas do that because most organisms are very sensitive to alcohol. So of course for these organisms it's cool if you produce then ethanol, you kill all others which are around that. It's smart. So for food and bioethanol production, the most relevant organism is Saccharomyces cerevisiae, but things are changing now that they start to think of using Pseudomonas, at least in the industrial bioethanol production. Certainly not in food, because that's not just ethanol, it's also the taste. What is it used for? Of course, you use for the production of alcoholic beverages, bread, or bioethanol. Now, Saccharomyces cerevisiae with 2E here, as I see, is highly adapted to glucose. So that's an interesting feature of yeast. So if you have yeast and you have sugar, yeast is so efficient in taking up the sugar that yeast thinks of, well, I could do respiration and be very efficient, but I don't care because this uptake and this process goes so fast. I don't need much enzymes going on here. So therefore, why should I care about overall yield? I produce tons of ATP per second because I can shuffle through so much molecules of ATP, of glucose per time unit. I don't go for respiration. So even in the presence of oxygen, yeast switches to an anaerobic alcoholic fermentation pathways due to this high efficiency with respect to the rate. And this is then called the Crabtree effect. That's very important because for breweries and so on, if this would not be the case, you need to work always in strict anaerobic conditions, in which it makes things more difficult. So as it's yeast, you don't care too much about getting an anaerobic condition. You're fine if it's just enough sugar there, and yeast will do and go with the fermentation. Now, this is also called Neubauer-1 fermentation. That's for the sake of completion. I have never heard that outside of the context of this lab course, but just remember for the lab course, this is Neuburg 1 fermentation. Now, if you want to produce glycerol, that's of course not standard. That's something what we then do in the lab course. So we capture this acetaldehyde and then we use dihydroxyacetone phosphate as an electron acceptor. And this is then 2 fermentation. And this was indeed used for industrial production of glycerol. However, this doesn't make yeast too happy because at the end you don't have a net ATP production. So this is just an applied approach. Okay, that's it about alcoholic fermentation. You know now how alcohol is being produced. Now let's go to the bar, have a small beer and enjoy it. And you know now what's happening. But be reminded, it's still toxic. So 1 beer and everything is fine. Thank you very much for your attention and goodbye.